Yeah, I'm Melanie Young, and I'm the owner of the Starchild skull, which is this little one over here. I received them in 1998 from a friend of mine, and she gave them to me because of my background in nursing, and I was a neonatal nurse for 15 years, and then I went into massage. That's how we met, and they gave me the skulls and asked me what I thought they might be, and of course, I looked at this one. I said, this one's just completely normal, no big deal. But this one, I knew immediately that it wasn't normal. And so I had three different theories. I thought, well, maybe it's just a genetic defect that I've never seen before. Or because the way the eyes were slanted to the side, and the fact that it is bone, I thought, well, maybe it could be a human-alien hybrid. Or, because it is so weird, maybe it's just alien. So I didn't know, but that's where I started at. That was my thoughts. I didn't know where to go from there, but I knew we needed to do some research. So about 3 or 4 months after that, I took it to the local MUFON group, the Mutual UFO Network, and I showed it to the leader there, and he didn't know what to do with it, but he did know someone who might. And he said, just wait, Lloyd Pye would be coming through town and doing a lecture on his research, and maybe he could help me out. So when he came in, we set up a meeting with him, and I pulled this out of the box, and he looked at it a good 2 or 3 minutes before he could speak. And he said, I don't know anything about aliens, but I do know what I would do if I found a Bigfoot. And because that's where his research was. And he said, if I found a Bigfoot, I would take it to all the scientists, have all of the scientific studying done, and make science listen to me. And that's where I knew we needed to do with this thing, was to do a scientific research. I just didn't know where to start. And he did. So I asked him if he would be willing to take on the project and see what he could find. He said, sure, it'll take me about 6 months and we'll have an answer. Well, it's been 16 years and we still don't have an answer. So that's what I'm trying to do, is answer the question, what is it? Yes, Lloyd passed away in 2013, and I promised his mother that I would finish the research and find out exactly what this was. And I feel obligated, not only to Lloyd, but to the skull. It deserves to find out what it is, and so that we can put it to rest, put the questions to rest in any way. But the most important thing, I think, that about the skull is because it is so different, it shouldn't have lived, but it did. And it lived a life that long enough for it to eat, to digest food, for the brain to grow as big as it did. There's something in the genes that can help humans, that can help us. And I want to find out what it is that made it live this long and that can help us. We found that there's the elemental composition of the skull is so different than ours, like it has aluminum in it. In one of the tests we did, it has a large amount of aluminum. You and I can't live with aluminum in our body. It causes Alzheimer's. But this thing survives with it. So if we can figure out how that happens and make that genetic click and maybe find a medicine that can stop Alzheimer's, that's what I'm in it for. The second DNA study that was done in 2003 by Trace Genetics, they are qualified at ancient DNA. We know that it's 900 years old, carbon dated. They've both been carbon dated at 900 years. So we know that for a fact. We know that Trace Genetics did the DNA. They did find maternal DNA, and that one of them is, I think, one's is a haplo A and the other one's haplo C, which is Native American, native to this area of the country, or the area in Mexico where they were found. So we know that there's part Native American in them, but we haven't been able to isolate the paternal DNA. So that's not been done. Then the lab, we went to another lab in 2011, and that lab found a small piece of the FOXP2 gene. And when they looked at that piece and compared it to a normal human FOXP2, the same number of nucleopeptides, they found 56 different variations in the Starchild skull versus a human. So we know that that's going to make it a totally different species, because humans can't have that kind of a variation. We can't have any variations or we die. And so, you know, a monkey has 2 variations in its FOXP2 than we do. So we know that any type of variation is going to require a different species, or it's going to die before it ever is born. This was born, and it lived long enough for all the bones to be put together. They're not completely fused, but at least they're connected in a way that, so we know that it's got to be older than 5, but I know that it's not 25, because by 25 all the bones are fused. And this one, the normal skull, isn't even completely fused. Some of these bones are still wobbly. But so, you know, there's some things that we know for a fact, and a lot, but when we know those things, we know we have even more questions. So that's interesting and fun and tiresome all at the same time. This is the companion skull that was found with it. So this one was laying on top of the ground, and the Starchild was found in a shallow grave right next to it. And you can see how thick the normal skull is. Yeah, if you look real closely, you can see that this part of the eye has been broken off on both sides. That's a break. This is the cheekbone where it's broken, and it's broken here. Okay. Here's the bridge of the nose, and there's actually a suture here, a suture line, where the 2 bones attach. This bone down here attaches to the forehead. So the nose is broken off, but look how wide it is. You know, that's going to be a really wide nose. This is where the teeth would have attached to, but of course the teeth have been broken. We do have a piece of the teeth of the right maxilla that fits right here. That is with the geneticist at this moment. So that's where that is. All of this down here has been cut to have for the first DNA testing. This is where we cut to have the testing done, and if you'll notice how narrow and thin the bone is, but yet it took a diamond bit Dremel blade to cut it. So not only is it thin, but it's extremely strong and dense. And then we found fibers in there, in the bone itself, when we don't know where they came from. And we found red residue in the holes under an electron microscope, of course. And we don't know what that is either. And so those are some things that we need to look into and see what it is. And then how flat the back is, but it's not really flat. If you get close enough, you'll be able to see the wiggle, how unflat it is, how the bobbles and stuff. The new independent investigation is being done with Chase Kletsky as my lead investigator, myself and Carrie McCure We've also asked for Dr. Aaron Judkins. He's coming on board as our lead anthropologist, and Joe Taylor from the Mount Blanco Fossil Museum. He's the one that found the Inca bones and has done all the made the castings and replications. So you can even buy a replica of the Starchild if you want by going through Mount Blanco Fossil Museum, and he's selling those. All proceeds are basically his. So we're not taking any donations or anything for any of the investigations that we're doing. It's strictly out of our pockets and above board. So ethically, we're trying to do it as ethically and above board as possible. I have never seen where any money could be had for me in this project at all, because when it goes to any medical advances or anything, that's all going to be whoever develops the medication or whoever owns the gene. I can't own a gene. I don't need to own a gene. I don't want to own it. I want to it's just I'm just altruistic. I just want to help, to see it through. I don't see any money coming for this at all. If nothing else, it's been a big headache. Out of love, of course, but I see no money involved in this, so there's nothing for me to gain for doing this except for just the pure joy of finding the answers. Chase's work is a totally new and independent investigation, not to negate anything that Lloyd's done, but to, in the scientific process, every test that has to be done, it has to be able to be reproduced. So that's what we're trying to do. Lloyd did a SIM test, we did a SIM test before, now we're trying to do another one. We need to see if those match. And if they don't, then we've got to do another one to see if we can find one that matches. So we're doing the scientific process now, and that's where Chase is going with it. And luckily she's taken me with her as a research assistant. So that's really cool. When Lloyd passed, a lot of the documentation that's required for admissibility for any science, we can't find. You know, he passed, he had no children, he had no wife when he passed. So, you know, when he died, it was all still in his apartment, and I bet you anything his family didn't know what they were looking at. Or the computer's now in storage and nobody even, you know, they haven't even thought to tell me. So, so a lot of the information that Lloyd had written down, we don't have access to, or I don't have access to. So I'm trying to find that, but I'm having a hard time finding that documentation. So without that documentation, everything that is in his work, if it's not documented in scientific terms, if it's not documented, it wasn't done. So we basically need to find the documentation and see if we can vet it, because even knowing I have a slide saying what the elemental composition is, but I can't say where that slide came from or who did it because I have no report for it. So without a report, it's just a picture. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to find all the reports from what we've already done so that we don't have to redo everything, or at least then I can say, okay, we did this test at University of London in the UK, and so such and such person did it, and here's the report. And then we can compare it to the report that Chase is going to get, and then we have two scientific studies that we can compare to. And that's what we're looking to do. So that's where the difference is with Lloyd being gone, we don't have access to that documentation. And so I'm trying real hard to find it and to get it available to not just me, but to everybody. Because when we started the project in 1999, we started it as a grassroots, and Lloyd and I promised the public that we would keep them informed step by step along the way. And so that's what we're trying to do is, and I told Chase the same thing. We need to, it's about, I own it, but it's part of who we are. So I want it to be, I've always been a grassroots person. I've always been the kind of person that everything's on a handshake. I take it at face value. So what I have, you have. What I know, you know. And as soon as I have test results that I can vet, that I know, okay, this test was done by this lab, and here's the lab guy that did it, and here's the report, and now here's the layman's terms of what that really means. Then we'll put that out, on the website that Chase has developed for the investigation, and on my personal website, so that we don't ever want to negate what Lloyd did. We want to treat Lloyd with respect. He was a dear friend of mine. I was with him 3 months before he passed. And I keep crying every time I think about it. So I want to make sure that he's just respected. No matter what it turns out to be, it's new. It's never been seen before. It's of historical value. History books have to change because this exists. If it's completely human, it's got 30 differences in just the skull. You and I can only have 2 and be alive. 3, you might live till 5. 4, you're not going to be born. So to have 30 and be born and to live, that's historical. That makes it into the textbooks. If we find out that the dad is not of this earth, that makes it into the textbooks because it changes everything. It changes everything because people don't, small-minded people who think we're it have to realize we're not.